All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Press 1 for Progress, presented by Computer Instruments. Before we begin, thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your support of IAUG. To our current members and those that are now new members by means of joining us today, I encourage you to visit iaug.org to get more information about how to get the most out of your membership, including upcoming events, IAUG councils, communities, and a library of online content. Now I have three quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webinar will be recorded and available for you on demand. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the Q&A window at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And third, there will be a short evaluation that pops up as you exit the webinar. Please take the moment to fill it out and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you may like to see going forward. And with that, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll turn it over to our presenters for today.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for showing up for the Computer Instruments Press 1 for Progress IVR about AI enabling your IVR. My name is Tim Barnes, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Computer Instruments. I'm going to move to first slide here. In case you're not familiar with Computer Instruments, we are a software as a service company and engineering firm with more than 4 decades, actually 47 years, I believe, at this point, of experience in voice automation and customer engagement technologies. We've seen just about everything in the industry. Our original certification as an Avaya partner actually dates all the way back to being certified by Bell Labs. So we've been around a while. We've seen almost everything. So from AES and Conversant and systems far before that. And we've been very focused over the last year in looking at a lot of the technological innovation around AI and how that can impact, in particular, the voice experience, the text experience, and the Avaya ecosystem. So what we're going to do in this webinar is kind of talk a little bit about the history of IVR, what some of the challenges were, what some of the good things were, and what some of the drivers are to moving to adopting AI within organizations, and in particular, how you might go about thinking about calculating ROI on that solution or justifying it within your organization. And when we get to the end, if you have particular questions, if you've been looking at AI or talking about or considering using it within your Avaya solutions inside your organization, and you have questions about ROI, how it gets justified, sort of the history and what's possible with AI, we can talk about that. And we're really open to any questions. This is part 1 of a 2-part series that we'll be doing. So we're just kind of laying the groundwork here today. We're not going to be talking about specific solutions that we offer. This is really setting the table to talk about how you ought to think about using AI within your Avaya products. So for Computer Instruments, our mission is pretty simple. We simplify and enhance how businesses communicate by delivering intelligent, dependable voice and automation solutions that prioritize the customer experience. And we do that across lots of different Avaya product lines. Our primary focus, though, is around self-service, whether that's in the voice channel or the SMS channel. That's where most of our projects sit. That's where most of our customers are. So Computer Instruments, founded back in 1979, was founded by Chris Herring and his brother. Chris likes to point out that CI has seen a lot of technology come and go, and that CI has almost always been an innovator. I know that lots of folks have been talking about AI very heavily for the last few years, but it's also knowing when to correctly apply the technology, when is the right moment to think about upgrading or offering different experiences. And as we've been innovators in the past, we like to think of ourselves as innovators in the future. And we've been playing around with and looking at solutions and implementing solutions at different levels of AI over the last year. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, some of the most basic IVR applications that ever existed If we think back to time and temperature, a basic information service, you call in, it relays the information back to you. Typically and initially, those projects were funded by banks to kind of drive interest and as a form of advertising. We can also think about applications in more of the unified communication space with things like voicemail, um, really a very early application that provided a lot of functionality for folks that didn't have to go out and purchase and hook up an answering machine. Now we've seen many, many more applications and technologies come out since that time. But the basic interface, the way in which the caller communicates with the application, still is predominantly driven by the telephone and the number of options that you have on that telephone. So, for example, when we're presenting an IVR application to a caller, and let's say it's a bank, for example. So this is a telephone banking application. And let's say that there's maybe 20 different functions that can be accessed through the telephone channel. We're only going to present 3 to 5 options at any one given time because otherwise it places too much cognitive load on the caller, which means that we end up with trees or levels of options that can be presented to that caller. So I may get 3 options in the main menu and then 5 options below that. And that's because we don't want to put too much cognitive load on that caller. But it also means that people have to go through very deep menu trees depending on what it is they're trying to accomplish. So the best practice, as many of you may already be aware, within the IVR world was to identify the top requests that you're getting and to put those requests near the top menu and then to filter down appropriately so that you're getting to the point of the conversation more quickly. But it also means then that there are lots of options that could easily be automated that usually weren't. Or if they were automated, then they weren't heavily utilized because callers would lose patience, hit zero, ask to speak to an agent, et cetera. And those options get bypassed. And let me give you a really great example, a personal example, with a very large, one might say, too big to fail bank in the United States that I won't mention by name. But I was calling recently to add another authorized user on the credit card. This is, again, a very large bank with a very large budget. They did offer speech recognition, but again, we're only presenting 3 to 5 options. Since my request is kind of an uncommon one, I want to just simply provide another authorized user. That menu was buried very, very deeply. I had to go through 4 levels before I even found the option. And when I found the option, it actually didn't provide any self-service. It just transferred me to someone else. Although the self-service options that were, or the information that was collected in order to effectuate adding another authorized user were already capable within the IVR application itself. So even though that would be great to be able to fully self-serve that function, this bank chose not to do it. And I had to go through a long series of menus in order to get there. But when we start thinking about AI and the ability to essentially have all the options that could be automated available in one spot, then we can begin to answer the phone and talk about what would you like to do? I'd like to add an authorized user. We don't have to spell out grammars as we had to in the days of speech recognition or build really complex menu structures for press or say, because every function is available at the tier 1 level. So when you implement an AI solution, you can avoid those deep menus and you can actually get higher participation rates because you're able to field more self-service options that you otherwise would be burying. And most organizations spend a lot of money in developing those self-service options, right? So you want them to be utilized by your customers. It becomes part of your ROI story. So what we end up with without AI and what we're constantly hearing is that IVR sucks. I know this one all too well. When I began my career as a computer scientist, freshly minted and out of university, I got my first job at Sprint. And I was really excited, and they sent me to this training for paraphonics, and then inner voice, and then voice tech. All of these being really old and ancient IVR systems. You can't tell from the gray, I'm a little old myself. But being a newly minted computer scientist, I wanted to tell my grandparents, and they asked what kind of job I did. And as I sat and explained it to my grandfather, and he asked questions, finally he gets to the point, he kind of looks at me and says, "So what you do is build those annoying things that I hate?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And for the next 20 years, yeah, I worked on these annoying things that a lot of people hated. But with the change in technology and what AI offers us, they don't have to suck anymore. They can actually be really engaging and provide a lot more functionality. But as we all know, cost is a huge driver of decisions within contact centers and within organizations. But the phone channel still remains the number one communication channel chosen by consumers when contacting a business. Not only that, but it's actually still growing. And vendors and companies are still placing complicated, unnecessary call flow prompts that leave customers confused, lost, and frustrated, like my example with adding an authorized user on a credit card. Many companies, when there was a strong backlash against IVRs in the early 2000s, attempted to solve this problem by utilizing offshore business process outsourcers for call handling. But, excuse me, I had something in my throat. But when an organization chooses to do that, you end up with a lot of compliance risk, right? Whether it's PCI or HIPAA, these organizations typically reside outside of your organization. The Wall Street Journal has talked about the fact that most identity theft that occurs over the phone happens with outsourced BPO-driven call centers. So there's a lot of distrust among consumers and a fair amount of backlash as well. The other thing is, more often than not, if I have a BPO front-ending my calls, I'm unable to take the data with that call if that call center is offshore and bring it into my organization. So I'm losing context on the reason why the person called. I'm not getting as the same screen pop. I may just get an Annie screen pop without necessarily getting full context to what the caller has navigated, what information they provided, and where things stand. So the way we can solve the BPO problem and solve the nested menu problem is to implement AI on the front end that has a full understanding and context, typically driven by source documents within the organization's website, and a lot of objectives and direction around what you're trying to accomplish by automating the call on the front end. So you have natural conversation, access to all of the information you need or would provide, as opposed to having to structure that information and make consumers search or go through multiple steps in order to get there. So we believe that the future of IVR is one in which AI will front end almost all the calls and manage and direct the orchestration and choreography of that conversation. That the conversation itself can be much more tied to customer data, which passes in context to the AI system, and that it'll flow and feel much more natural. And in our follow-on webinar, we'll start to show you some examples of that. But if you're wanting to sort of build a business case inside your organization for utilizing AI technology, you're going to want to think about a few things. One, how many self-service options are you currently making available to your customers? How well utilized are they? How are you measuring ROI? Is it through containment of the call, meaning that someone's completed their full request within the IVR? Is it in the reduction of telco minutes because you're steering a call and you're able to have less time in your nailed up connection? When you start to think about AI, that ROI model starts to change a little bit because now we have something that sounds better to the consumer, has more context, is secure and private, meaning we're not sharing information with a person, rather we're sharing it with a system, which provides a higher level of security for that caller. And we're also able to consistently answer the phone in the tone and manner and drive a conversation where nobody's having a bad day. So you start to think about trading off automation with actual personnel costs versus just nailed up telco costs or completion rates or getting a little further and shortening the conversation, which has typically been the ROI for implementing IVR. So with that, In our follow-on webinar, we'll be talking about the future of IVR and laying out several examples of how an AI conversation can be built and some of the constraints and things that need to go into how you design that, and also how you go about replacing the system that's already there and protecting your data at the same time. And with that, I got through that a lot faster than I thought. I'm going to open myself up for questions. Seriously, nobody has a question? All right. Well, this went a lot faster than we planned. I hope it tempted you into joining our next webinar where we're going to get into some real concrete examples. And thank you very much for your time and for giving this a listen.